I know his name was Johnny, but it should have been Christopher because he was Christopher
No.
Walken.
Boo, tomato,
Hello.
tomato.
Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie,
And Nikisha.
where we share our love for all things scary and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone, and a happy hootin' October to you.
Happy hootin'.
Happy hootin'. It's spooky season, our favorite time of year, even though we're spooky all year round. But now is the society's appropriate time to express love for all things spooky. So here we are. And today, to celebrate ushering us into spooky season, we are talking about the 2024 Canadian slasher film In a Violent Nature. Cue spooky sounds, Foley artists, tree snapping, all the things. Now, this film was written and directed by Chris Nash, and it stars one Rye Barrett, Andrea Boblovic, and Lauren Marie Taylor. Now, heavy spoilers for In a Violent Nature. It is streaming currently on Shudder. If you have not seen it yet, press pause. Go watch it. It's only an hour 20, and then come back. Let us know your thoughts. And Jamie, please hit us with all those trigger warnings with this movie.
That's challenging.
It's a lot.
Well, I will say that this is a slasher film, so
Yes.
there is a wide variety of insides on the outside.
I love it's a wide variety.
A wide breath, if you will, of people's breath being taken away.
Yikes.
Yeah. God, I don't even know. Well, okay, if you don't like slashers, this is absolutely not not for you.
Think about it. Yeah.
Don't even peep at it. If you don't like movies that take place in the woods, also very scary. If you don't like scary lore about a slasher, campfire-esque tales, you don't like death by log splitter, death by yoga?
Death by yoga.
Yeah,
Oh.
you know, I've never done yoga, and I can tell you right now, I never will now.
No. Especially now. No, thank you. Swimming?
Just dismemberment. Yeah, swimming, drowning, dismemberment, just the crap beat out of someone. Yeah, what?
All the things.
Just it's yeah, anything you can think of. Bear trap.
Child abandonment.
Yeah. Or like child abuse.
Also,
Yeah.
lockets. If you're not into lockets, this might not be the film for you.
Stay away.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean it is your run-of-the-mill slasher with an interesting concept. But again, if you're not into slashers or you don't like that type of gore, then this might be not for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into everything, producer Brian, please give us a couple words.
Yes, of course. Happy October, everybody. We are really in the thick of the season. I mean, we're at the beginning of it, but to become September, we're in the thick of it. Anyway, besides the point.
I mean, it starts in August. We're in the thick of it.
That's true. That's true.
As far as I'm
fair.
concerned.
It's all, like as Nikisha said, it's all year round. Welcome to our level. So long story short, we are wherever you can find us at Talk Horror Pod. We'll be doing a lot more reviews on TikTok and Instagram at Talk Horror Pod. Follow us and find us there. We also are on YouTube. Hi, YouTube.
What up?
Yeah, Jamie and I are in the middle of a Chucky binge, so you'll see some of that content.
Yeah.
I'm halfway through a couple movies with the little kiddo. I watch half of it, and then I like when I'm in the mood to finish it, I'll do that. Not ideal, but it's where we're at. I'm in the middle of Frogman and the Tunnel currently. Um,
Oh.
Oh yeah, the tunnel. We started that.
we had to finish that one. Then he started crying. Um, and yeah, so all of those reviews and stuff that we don't do here on the podcast, you'll find on social media. And yeah, I'm
Oh, I
excited
started
to talk.
reading scary books.
Oh yeah,
Well,
we'll
I
do
read
some book talk
one.
stuff. We'll do some horror book talk stuff for sure.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
book
good
was it?
point.
I read Horror Store, or I listened to the audiobook. I'm trying to get into audiobooks to get me back into reading. But Horror Store, it's the same author that does Final Girl Support Group and like all of those horror books.
Nice.
It was fun. I definitely recommend it if you're looking for like horror comedy, clever, fun times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, something else I want to announce is that for our Halloween episode coming out on Halloween, because Halloween is a Thursday and Talking Horror comes out on Thursdays,
Woo-woo.
we are going to be watching all of the like core Universal monster movies. So that includes Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Wolfman, Invisible Man, The Mummy, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. If we have the time, we'll also watch the original Phantom of the Opera and Hunchback. We'll get you those. But yeah, throughout the month, if you want to catch up with us, watch those. We're going to rank them and talk through all of them on our October 31st episode. So I'm just giving you all listeners and watchers, hi YouTube, heads up so that you can some of them are on YouTube, some of them are hi YouTube, some of them are on YouTube, and then some of them are on Peacock and a couple other streamers. So just giving you a heads up there, because if you wanted to watch them, this is a perfect month to do so.
Fantastic. Also, if anyone wants to engage about The Nun 2, Beetlejuice 2, or The Deliverance, please hit up our social medias because I must discuss some of these things with some people.
Well, Jamie and I saw The Nun too, so we can talk to you about that.
Oh, fantastic. We'll have to have a side discussion about that because it's on Hulu. So I just popped it in one day. It's like, let's see. But
I love how only us millennials will say pop it in.
Oh my gosh, that is such an aging thing to say.
I knew what you meant, but you hit play. Right. But I would pop in a DVD or a VHS or whatever. That's so funny.
Yeah, do other people not know what that means? What pop it in means?
I'm sure there's probably some people who don't.
Papa John, pop it in.
Papageno, that's her mom.
Papageno, good guy.
Yes. And even when you said pop it in, like I didn't even think of DVD. Like I went straight to VHS.
Sure.
Like
speaking of VHS Beyond is a next week's episode, so that's streaming on Shudder.
So excited!
Yeah, I'm really pumped for that.
That's gonna be great. Well, we need a plot summary of what we're discussing today.
Oh, I totally forgot.
I knew you forgot.
And you could see it in my eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See it in his eyes.
What's the plot?
So, producer Brian is going to give us a 2-minute plot summary, which I don't even think you'll need the whole 2 minutes.
No, I won't. Yeah. I'll probably do a shout out or something like that at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
But Jamie's going to time out.
I don't know, Ted, our dog.
Oh, okay. All right, so 2 minutes on the clock for you to tell us everything about In a Violent Nature. You probably could describe the movie in a lot of detail in that 2-minute period of time. All right, ready, steady, go.
Okay, so In a Violent Nature is an avant-garde slasher film where we're following the slasher movie, this cliche, stereotypical slasher movie, from the perspective of the slasher. In this case, it's a guy named Johnny who just wants to be reconnected with his mother. So what we find out is that he gets awakened by some teens in the woods who take the locket that's kind of locking his soul into his grave. He basically starts searching for it, taking out the teens one by one. Again, we are from his point of view. So like We're watching him walk and walk and walk and walk and walk and walk and walk. It's beautifully shot, but he keeps walking. And then he overhears the teens, or maybe they're more than teens, the young people, I'll say. Kills a lot of them. There's the yoga kill. There's a lot of pretty good kills in this in general. Then he's walking some more. Then we find out the cop in the area, or the park ranger, or whatever he is, like his father put his soul away the first time, so they're trying to put his soul away this time. Long story short, they end up giving the locket back, and the sole survivor ends up being picked up by somebody who starred in a previous Jason movie. She gives a speech about her like brother or brother-in-law being killed by a bear, or escaping a bear, and then the movie ends. So that is the plot of this movie. And we went to Spirit Halloween today, and we got Elliot a costume, and we're very excited about that. It was his first Spirit Halloween experience. He slept the whole time, but we had a great time. And that's In a Violent Nature.
Love it.
You still have 15 seconds.
I still have 15 seconds. Yeah, there are lots of cool kills in this. There's the wood. There's like the cutting where it takes like 25 minutes to cut him up. Then there's the tree strangulation through the mouth thing. Then there's the yoga one. There's the bear trap one that kind of happens off camera. There's some stabbings. There's that overhead shot. Let's use as drone watching them run away, which is actually pretty cool.
Your time is up.
And that's In a Violent Nature.
And that's the plot.
Yes. Well, let's get into it with our first segment of likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
Jamie, would you like to go first?
Certainly. So this was my first time seeing this film since it just came out, and I thought it was okay. I agree with Brian that it's quite beautiful. And I like how, they really spend a lot of time like in the scenery. I mean, they're really chewing that scenery. I mean, he's just walking around in a beautiful place.
No cannibalism in this one, even though they're chewing.
Yeah, not chewing the scenery in that way. But it is, I feel like the scenery, like you're spending so much time there, it does feel like you're being transported there. And so like that added like degree of immersion, I feel like is really present.
Yeah.
Which I don't always feel when I'm watching other slashers, that like this is kind of, it's not like a parody of it, but it's just like doing it from a different perspective. But I don't like watching the Friday the 13th movies. I don't feel like I'm being transported into, a campsite. But this really, this did really make me feel, this made me feel like I wanted to actually be there, which is ironic.
Interesting.
I probably don't, just because it was like, it made me think of like Maine and like other like summers at sleepaway camps and things like that, where it's like it almost made me feel nostalgic for summertime. And like I say all of that to say that I feel like the imagery really evokes something within me, and like that was really effective. That being said, it's spending a lot of time doing that, and the walk, it's a lot of walking. And it made me, I felt lazy watching this movie because I realized that I haven't
of it all.
No, my lack of walking. I haven't walked a lot lately. Because I just had a baby. So
I think that's a valid excuse.
Sure, but I was like, oh man, like this guy's really walking. I need to like. He came out of the ground and he's walking all over. Like I need to catch up and start walking.
I know his name was Johnny, but it should have been Christopher, because he was Christopher Walken.
Tomato.
Boo, tomato. But great effort.
Because I feel like the kind of core stuff of this movie is fairly short, and it's just extended by a lot of the walking. And there was a part of me that's like, do we make, I mean, it's only 94 minutes, but I want to say probably like 30 of it feels like extra fluff.
Yes.
Could we have done like a short film, like a an hour of this and maybe not make it feature length, and it
Can
would
I
have
just
been
say,
really effective.
I
Yeah.
I put that exact same sentence in my likes and gripes. I said that
Really?
this needed to be just an hour and it would
Hmm.
have been so effective. Like literally what you said. So I agree with you 1,000%. Cut this down to an hour, make it a short horror film, and I think people would have been even more receptive of this point of view of storytelling in slasher movies.
Yeah, I feel like, because I feel like it's doing something pretty profound, and
Yes.
like you get it, but then I feel like it's kind of like timing is really important for a lot of for comedies, for for tension building.
Mm-hmm.
um but I do feel like there's a window when it comes to like timing, and
Mm-hmm.
there's just moments where I'm just like, I feel like the impact is lessened the longer I'm spending just watching this guy walking. And
Yeah, it
and so
slows
like
down.
that it's like, how do you strike a balance of like doing something that is very different and unique, but also like staying, keeping the tension up and not just like kind of losing it because it's just the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
um and I again, that's not to say that like I didn't like the rest of it, because I thought that some of the kills in this were wildly unique, especially seeing like, because the focus is on the killer. It's just like you're following him, and then like, I will say there was a couple moments where I was like, he's very creative in his kills. Like, how I thinking in comparison, you have to compare this to other slashers, right? Because like that's essentially what it's inviting you to do. And
Mm-hmm.
thinking about how, like, obviously, yes, in some of these movies, some of the kills become a little bit absurd. But like there's also a balance, I feel like, between creativity and like what is available to you in the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
there are some moments where I was just like, how did you even think to do this? And I'm like on the edge of like, is he such a creative killer? And like, what would possess, no pun intended, him to like choose this action in his death? And really, like, the yoga kill is what I think about. It's like, what compelled him to like do that?
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Mm-hmm.
Johnny's just
so
he's a
absurd.
creative type.
A creative
Sure.
soul, if you
He
will.
really,
Yeah.
he was like assigned slasher killer, and he was like, I'm gonna get extra credit on my kills. And like,
Yes.
that's what, like, I mean, it's like, it's so absurd, but it's like very grotesque and just wild. But then
Mhm.
also there's the log one, which the
Yes.
log splitter one, which kind of didn't really do it for me
Mm.
as much as like the yoga one, because that one also kind of felt really long. It's like you're watch first, he like, because he already incapacitated him, um he him like cutting off the hand and like not really seeing a reaction at, like, you weren't going to get a reaction because he's already incapacitated. So
Right.
I and then it's like, oh, now it's the hand and now it's his head, and I was like, okay, like, it's just like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes it was like really creative and like absurd. Other times it kind of felt really slow. And then you just have like a bunch of stereotypical ones. So it was mixed for me in terms of like being kind of all over the place with the effectiveness of like the kills, scares, if you will.
For
Um
sure.
but there, I still found like myself kind of holding my breath with tension, especially like when once they actually know that they're being pursued, and they're trying to get away from him. That I found was the most exciting part of this movie, because I know
Mm-hmm.
that we're just like following this killer going after them, and like knowing, based on tropes of horror movies, that like he's going to catch up to them eventually, and like what's going to happen to them and who's he going to get first, and like stuff like that. Like that I felt was really exciting. Before the log splitter kill, I actually really liked when there was like the trio of the ranger and the other two, one with the locket, and
Mm-hmm.
they first incapacitate Johnny, and then they're like, okay, you need to tie him up, and he's like, I can't do that. Like that whole scene, I was like, I know exactly what's going to happen, and I know this how this is going to end, but like there is still that moment of tension, and because we're watching it from the perspective of Johnny, we're like low on the ground, and like you know, we see the butt of the shotgun and all of that stuff. Like you still know, but there is still really effective tension building. So like it felt really mixed. My attention was like captured in some moments and kind of lost in others, but I still think it was a really clever concept that I maybe felt needed to be a bit shorter and just not a feature length film, unless they packed it with like more people and more kills. But I don't know if that would have made it too long.
Right. No, I agree. Brian, do you want to give some thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll keep my likes and gripes pretty basic. I also kind of liked this movie, kind of being the operative word in that sentence. Like Jamie, I think it's beautifully shot. I think it's really fun in places. I think some of the kills, whether or not they're justified by the creativity of Johnny, like are fun to watch, if you will. I think that this avant-garde aspect, even with all the walking, like this is what you signed up for. You know what I mean? Like this movie is exactly what it's trying to be, and I really appreciate that about it. Some of my favorite moments in this movie are when he's spying on the young people, and I say that because I really like filling in the blanks with our knowledge of cliche horror films, if that makes sense, and like knowing that like this love triangle doesn't really matter, but like I know what's happening here. Like I thought that aspect of things was very fun. I thought the character of Johnny was super cool. I like that moment where he's like looking in the mirror and he sees his mom like giving him the like I like that cheesy, like very like Jason 5, 6, 7 type of like vibes that this one has.
Yeah. Or when he's like playing, when they throw the car keys, but the keychain has the car on it, and he like picks it up and is like playing with it like a little kid. It's like a reminder of what the lore is. That was cool.
100. That's a real 100%. I also, I really like. So this is where my gripes start to come in. I really like that it sticks to a lot of its own rules, meaning there is no score to this movie. Like it's not like those found footage movies that all of a sudden have like music behind it. I'm like, that's not how this was probably edited in the camera. Whereas this one, like the no score comes in, except for when he's like listening on the headphones and stuff like that. Like totally cool, totally okay. So that I liked. But on the flip side of it, my gripes are similarly to Late Night with the Devil. This movie gets lazy and decides not to continue with its premise. The second that we leave Johnny and then go with the final girl in the car at the end, it completely lost me because what I was expecting and anticipating from the movie is that him getting the locket and then watching him kind of like go back into his grave. Because like I don't care about the final girl. I am dedicated to Johnny's experience of being his soul being woken up, getting what he wants, and then like going back. To me, that's like the interesting thing. And I thought that this movie completely botched the ending. And I think it did itself a disservice by not doing that. Because on the other hand, thematically, this movie was trying to say something that I don't think it got across. Thematically, this movie is trying to say something about a violent, like nature is violent, like the nature of people is violent, and the nature itself is violent. Because she tells that story. I forget which the actress is from. One of the is the actress I think is from the second Friday the 13th that we just watched.
I didn't know.
I don't remember, but when she's telling the story about her the bear, like and all of that stuff, and the bear is violent, like you think the story's going to be like it was actually a murderer, but like it's the
Vicky.
Yes, I think she's the one who she's the one who starts to get intimate with the guy who falls down
with the hat.
No, the guy who falls down the
wheelchair.
wheelchair.
Who falls down the stairs.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So, so my point being is that thematically, this is trying to say like that the nature is violent no matter what. It could be Johnny, it could be a bear. Like, you know, you just have to watch out. You don't know what you're in for. Blah blah blah. I don't think that got the point across. I also don't think that filling us in on the theme and her like PTSD from coming out of the woods was interesting or more interesting than like what the movie was showing us with Johnny. If you're going to start the movie with us just hearing the voices of the young people, the teens awakening him, like from that ground position, like I want to end back up there. And that's the movie. Stick with your avant-garde. The way that Late Night with the Devil kind of stopped doing their premise, the found footage, and this one stopped doing the slasher point of view, that really, 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 really bothered me. And I think that a movie I was weirdly entranced by, like Jamie said, was kind of like undercut by them not following through with their own rules and their own premise. That all being said, this had a sequel greenlit. So I will absolutely sit down and watch a sequel to this. Like I think that I enjoyed this more having binged all of the Friday the 13th movies last year for the first time. That really enhanced that. But at the end of the day, as cool as this was, or interesting as the concept was, just give me another Jason movie. Like I just want a Jason movie. Like as opposed to like this one avant-garde one-off is fine. I don't need this to be a chain. You know what I mean? Like I want another Friday the 13th. I don't want some like emotionally charged prequel. Like I like to Friday the 13th, Crystal Lake or whatever it is. I want another Jason movie. Like let's just go, people. Like that's fine. Anyway, I did like this movie, but
what would be
I had a lot
funny-
of big gripes.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No,
I
no,
was just gonna say to your point about the sequels of it all. What would be funny is if it was just like different kind of versions of slashers, like if they did like a Freddy-esque one. We're following him
like you
around,
don't use
you know what I
Johnny
mean?
again. You make them
No.
like anthology point of views.
Yes,
Oh, that's cool.
like I would watch that.
Yeah, why not?
Make it an hour though. Just still cut it down.
Yeah, right. Make it a
an
TV,
hour.
an elevated TV show.
Absolutely. And I would totally be down. And it's just anthology, just different slashers that we know and love, but just like from their perspective and like
Totally
down. Sorry. Anything else, Brian?
No, that I just wanted to keep that pretty straightforward. That was my experience with this, and I was happy I watched it at home.
Yeah, same. You guys said the majority of the things. I remember when I first started watching this, it was after you guys watched it, and I remember texting you guys and saying, "Is he going to be walking the whole time? Because if he is, I can't finish this movie." And nobody responded because they knew what the answer was.
Yeah, I was like, I can't taint your
her experience away from
watching
her.
of this.
I will say that I went in blind, so I didn't know what this was going to be about at all. I just knew that we were anticipating this movie coming out because it had some buzz about it. So then after the fact, realizing that it was supposed to kind of mirror a nature documentary, that it was from the point of view of the slasher, it was just an interesting thing to experience all like in the moment. So I will say that I had a good time watching this movie. Could it have been shorter? Yes, I agree. Too much walking. It felt like I was literally playing Dead by Daylight, but I was lost and trying to find where that's what I thought about the whole time. And I'm also awful at third person point of view games anyway, so that literally would be me just wandering around like trying to figure out where I was on the map because I didn't know where I was going. But I will speak to the effectiveness of it not having a soundtrack, like Brian said. Also, shout out to the Foley artists and the props and prosthetics. I thought that those were
all great,
very well. And I think Brian, we had mentioned this or talked about it maybe off camera about how the sound effects were really great in this movie, and that's what kind of really makes this movie. And when I was watching parts of it the second go around to prepare for this podcast, and I watched it with headphones on, and the whole lake scene was like beautifully done.
Sure.
That's cool.
Listening to the sloshing of him like getting out of the lake and her screaming, but then and hearing the echo of her scream, but then her being brought back down into the water. I was like, oh, this is a gorgeous, coupled with a gorgeous scenery. I was like, this is a gorgeous scene in general.
Yeah.
So, like,
yeah.
really, really loved that. I will say that I did feel the tension in the, even though they switched point of views, I still felt a lot of tension with the final girl, just because it's such a long driving scene and you just don't know when he's going to show up. Plus, there's like no music happening
Yeah,
and this lady telling the
totally.
story. So,
The tension was
I,
great, and I
yeah,
like the idea. I like the concept of the end where, like, she doesn't know if he's gonna pop out again. Like, she's like
right.
really nervous. She doesn't want her to stop the car, but like, I understand. A part of me gets that the
Mm,
second he gets the locket, it's no longer his story because his soul is
like
back at
rested
rest.
again.
But
Yeah.
I did want to see him like walk back and go back in. You know what I mean? Like, I think
Agreed.
that was important if you're going to start that way. But I agree with you. The tension at the end was great, and the juxtaposition of the gorgeousness of the woods of this
Hmm.
area that both of you have mentioned, both in the sound effects and the scenery and all of that, juxtaposed to like the brutality of these kills, was kind of nice to watch in general.
It was, and it's this weird feeling too of the two emotions of like watching this beautiful thing because we like nature, like we like being outdoors in a sense. Like
We
y'all go
do like
camping and stuff,
nature.
Sometimes.
sometimes. And then seeing this brutality, and all these kills, it's just like, how am I supposed to feel? Because I'm looking at something super gorgeous, but also super grotesque at the same time. So I
Mm-hmm.
just really like how they play on that throughout
Yeah.
the movie. Already said that it should have been shorter. One scene thing that I also really enjoyed was the very first victim, the old man in the house, and
Mm.
Johnny was reaching for him, about to kill him, and then it cuts to a shot of Johnny's bloody hand and him
Yeah.
reaching. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Um, I do like that we don't really know anything about the victims. And even when we had that long exposition, about Johnny, really the only reason why we are watching this is because we're still watching from the point of view of Johnny too. So it all made
Mm-hmm.
sense as opposed to like just a random cut to the kids just to try to get exposition. It still made sense because you still see Johnny watching from afar. And that's the only reason why we're watching this scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. Loved all the kills. We already talked about that. Yeah, I think that's it. I had a good time watching this. I would watch a sequel as well, but again, I just think that there were some things that could have been shortened. And if
Yeah.
this was an hour long, I would have absolutely like had the time of my life watching this
Sure.
because I love gore kills. I don't even care how obnoxious they were. I'm like, this is what I came
Yeah.
for.
Would you?
Mhm.
All
Here's a
of the
question
insides on
for
the
you.
outside. Yeah.
Would you have liked this movie if that whole end was cut with her in the car and it was just Johnny going back into the grave and ends?
Yeah, because I don't think I would have missed anything. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
if that scene was cut, because like you said, we're not invested in these people at all. So like, why do I need a whole? And it was the whole last 15 minutes is
Yeah.
just them in the car. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, like you said, if it opened with him coming out of the ground for however long that scene was, like make
Yeah.
it end and have a
Bookend
complete
it.
circle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
I agree. Yeah. Great. Anything else anyone wants to say about this?
No, you also
I don't
could have
think so.
included that bear story, like him overhearing something. You know what I mean? Like that could have
Yes.
been somewhere else if you wanted to get that point across with that monologue. Anyway,
Right.
back to you.
No, I
Nikisha.
agree because it's the same thing. It's like
Yeah.
there's no point of view. He's nowhere to be found. We don't know.
Mhm.
So we're just following this random people talk about bears.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's move on to our next section. Brains. Tasty. So
Tasty.
Jamie, I want to ask you about cancel culture because that's what's happening in that little bonfire scene when they're just talking about Johnny, but then they were going to say some very inappropriate things, but they don't because they're going to be recorded and they talk about cancel culture. So my question to you is, how do you think cancel culture has kind of changed the behaviors of us as a society?
Ooh.
I know it's a big question. But I
It's
just think
deep.
about how people are combating the two mindsets of like wanting to present themselves in a certain light because they're in the public eye, as opposed to what they truly believe, and just going back with those two mindsets and how that could affect like who they are, how they, see themselves or how they present themselves.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like I've gotten to a point where like when people start like calling they like reference cancel culture, I get annoyed because my understanding is like that now people are being held accountable for the things that they're doing. And
Talk about it.
and like why is accountability a bad thing?
Yeah,
Question mark. Like
I agree
I
fully.
great. Conversation over. No, but like it's so that's why I think it's so interesting that like maybe there's something about like the language that makes people like because it's rooted in like accountability, and then like the consequence is this kind of larger like boycotting or like moving away from whoever is being perceived as having done something like really wrong that needs to be held
Right.
accountable for their actions.
Right.
I think that like I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are fearful of that, and it does change their behavior. But then also like why is that a bad thing? Like why if
Yes.
you're concerned that you might be doing something that like that society at large will boycott you, like why do you feel compelled to do that thing?
Yes.
um what is like why do you want to do that?
Right. Why do you think that gives you the right to just do that,
Yeah, and like perhaps there is something performative in behaving differently because you're fearful of getting canceled, if you will. But
Yeah.
like I think also then there is this level of awareness of maybe like do you have to do that thing? Like I think that comes up in a lot of conversations around like um power and privilege, especially like white people who react really negatively when they're told that they like can't do a certain thing.
Yeah.
And it's like you inherently hold this power because of the color of your skin. Like why do you have to do this thing? Like because somebody
Right.
told you that you can't do this, you're itching to do that thing. Like oh you can't, like some people get really like up in arms about like not being able to say the n-word, for example, and it's like why? Like it's one, I mean there's
Why?
plenty of words, but like let's say that there's just especially one word that you just like can't say. Why do you like why like the temptation when you're told no is then like so great, but it's like yeah you like that's not appropriate, and you should be
Right.
held accountable for for your actions.
Right.
So I think that like because the idea of like being canceled, I think that like the language then inherently like makes people, I don't know, think about it differently versus just being held accountable. Because it's like if we're holding people accountable in different ways over time. Like
Yeah.
people have been able to get away with other things, in the past. Again, it's like thinking about like who's in charge, who holds the most power, and as other voices are becoming louder, are they more emboldened to like actually call out behaviors that are not acceptable,
Right.
because they're gaining power or because like they're given more of a platform to call out behaviors, like the Me Too movement, for example. It's like, women don't inherently hold power, but like we've collectively been able to take back more power to then create a movement that like there is like power behind to call out like, people who have done terrible, awful things, who should
Yep.
not be able to maintain their positions of power, like, not just because they've done terrible things, but also it's like, mediocre people who just
Yes.
like exist
Are
and then
terrible.
get
Yes.
to get to do whatever. So so I feel like sometimes it's lost like the language of like cancel culture, or even like I think it's transitioned into like call out culture, which I think gets us closer to the actual point, which is holding people accountable. But I think on another level, I think that like I think there's some complexity to it. Like, I don't think that people should be shamed or like, made to feel badly about like participating in cancel culture. Um, because then I feel like because it then becomes this like larger um like group thing, I feel like it kind of it like takes away from like, hey, let's focus on like the actual issue of like holding this person accountable for having done something wrong, and like
Yeah.
that's the priority. It then feels like there's all this other stuff that like, and I wonder how much of that is intentional too. It's like when the conversation then moves to like, oh, like, all this like woke language about like people getting canceled, blah blah blah, like people can't do anything anymore, like, okay,
Right.
boomers. But
Exactly.
it like, it's like then that's moving the spotlight away from the actual thing, where the actual thing is like, no no no, wait, hold on, like this person did something bad, like they shouldn't be able to continue to do that, right? Like, does that make
Exactly.
sense?
Yes. No, that absolutely makes sense because, like, to your point, the people have been doing the bad things, right? It's just now that we're in a state of the world where it can be more put in the forefront. It's like, yes, let these people get accountability for their actions, like be accountable for their actions, because this stuff has sometimes it's stuff that's in regards to you talking about like the N word and stuff. It's like stuff that's been going on for generations and
Forever and
years,
ever. Yeah.
forever and ever. And it's like it's always kind of been a bad thing, but now we're in a place as a society to be like, oh, we have now all viewed and seen you do this bad thing, say this bad thing, and now we're calling you out on it, like you said.
Yeah.
So it's like that's, if you want to call it cancel culture, I'm glad that you brought up the difference in wording of it, because it is just trying to have people take accountability for their actions. And if someone is doing something that is wrong, then they shouldn't be able to, like you said, continue to do what they were doing. Call them
Yeah.
out so that they know that it was wrong. Usually they do know that it's wrong. They still want to do it anyway, like you said. But
Mm-hmm.
now you're taking the power away from them, and they don't have
Mm-hmm.
the privilege to continue on doing it without any repercussions to their actions.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally get it.
Yeah. But no, I think if people are compelled to uh behave differently because they are fearful that they will be canceled, again, I think that there is some level of awareness of like, maybe you don't need to do that thing. Perhaps
Right.
that's not the best idea. Perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
the influence of like changing your behavior
For the
towards
good.
something better
Yes.
isn't a bad thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like there's, I think from the other side, which like I don't empathize with the other side, but like,
Mm.
I guess thinking about family conversations that that I have not quite engaged in, although Brian
Mm-hmm.
did. Props to Brian,
Okay.
because the last well, speaking of boomers and family, when
Mm-hmm.
I remember when like it was about this conversation actually, and my family, like my parents were staying when Elliot was born, and like everyone was all together, and for some reason the topic came up on this kind of, but it was talking about like comedians and like,
Oh
some
Oh
yeah,
no.
comedians
I
Oh
forgot
who
god.
are
about
like
this. Yeah, yeah.
oh, we can't go to these certain places to like perform because we might get canceled, and it's like infringing on our speech and our routines. And it's like I have a lot of like asterisks and like question marks
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Brian took on all the boomers, and it was really impressive. And while I don't think that necessarily any perspectives were changed,
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's still, I just kind of zoned out because it's like my own
I just
parents, so
like
like I'm not
riling them
gonna.
up. I like riling them up a lot.
But I get it. It's something in being able to at least express like why this could be problematic, what you are saying. But I'm with you, Jamie. I would have just disassociated and like not said
Yeah, but again, like I'm going to disassociate because it's my own family. But like
yes,
it is
yes.
really frustrating because like they're just speaking on something that like other people are believing and saying, where it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
like nobody can say anything anymore. It's like, oh, it's just like I think I personally think that's all bullshit.
Yes. Agreed.
So
Because Because there's still so many comedians who are continuing on in their careers and having amazing.
I'm sorry, did comedy die? Or we're just done with comedy now because we can't just say whatever the fuck we want? Like, no.
Right.
And the idea that like the idea that people can't evolve over time, like is frustrating. And I think that also speaks to like what we were saying before about like the N-word. It's like this has existed over the entire like history of this country. And it's like, why can't we move past it? Like, what is going on? But again, I think that when society is already inherently rooted in you know, upholding one particular population and then everybody else is, you know, marginalized, then it's harder to create that change. So when there is some discourse on like, hey, maybe this isn't funny anymore, like maybe this isn't like, you know, we're not doing this, like there's some movement happening. But I think ultimately, like, you know, power and privilege will, like, for white people primarily, for white men primarily, will like continue to, you know, not change a lot of things, unfortunately. Maybe that's a very pessimistic view on my end. I hope that I'm not right. I hope that there will be, you know, actual change in our future.
Agreed.
But I think it's like requires a lot of inner reflection to and unlearning to like recognize that, to be able to create that change. But
and like you said,
I
evolution.
think, yeah, like, hello, in the year of 2024, like, we could do better. We can always do better.
We can that's the key word. We can always do better. Yes, I'll leave it at that, because that's great. Fantastic. Well, should we Rotten Tomato this?
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Rotten Tomato.
Let's Rotten Tomato this. All right. What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
Was that Elliot's guess?
Elliot's guess is a give me the bottle. Okay. Every time I unmute the mic, I have to take the bottle out of his mouth.
Oh.
So anyway, so what do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
72.
61.
Wow, it's a 79.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
okay, but do you know, now guess the audience score.
50?
I was going to say 48.
44.
Wow.
All right, and the critics' consensus is as single-mindedly focused on mayhem as its demonic monster, in a violent nature serves up a deliciously disgusting feast for gore aficionados.
Okay.
All right.
I'll take it.
All right. All right. And what do you think this has on what do you think this has on Letterboxd? Again, as a reminder, Letterboxd is 1 through 5, or 0 through 5, I should say, with decimal points. Jamie, why don't you start?
3.2.
Nikisha?
2.7.
2.8.
I almost said 2.8.
Damn.
Trust your instincts.
Right.
So one of my favorite reviews on here is from the reviewer David Sims. He goes, "Tromp, tromp, tromp, the most intense gory shit you've ever seen. Tromp, tromp, tromp."
That's actually accurate. That is the synopsis of the film. Of this.
Thank you.
So here are the top 3 most popular reviews. The third one, it's a longer review, but I think the first sentence is why it's the third most popular, so I'll just read that. Surpassed only by playing as Jason on the Friday the 13th multiplayer video game.
Yes.
Next one is, this is the second place one. She definitely got stretched out more.
Oh my god.
Gross. I hated that.
And then the most popular review is, homie step counter is easily hitting 10K every day.
Every day.
Every day.
His rings are
only
closing.
if you take his little necklace.
Oh yeah. Do you think like Freddie is like sends a text when he gets like his rings have closed? Like Johnny's
Yes.
rings have closed, and Freddy's like, "See you in the dreams."
Right. Because they're all connected, so they're all
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
outdo each other's steps. Obsessed.
totally. Um, all right. So should we move on to the four S's?
Yeah.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horns 4 S's.
All right. The four S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. We rank them 1 through 10 and give our suggestions. Skulls is how much this handled mental health and human behavior. Scares, how scary was this? And shakes, how much will you remember it? Jamie, let's start with you.
Sure. So for skulls, it's kind of hard because we're getting this perspective of this undead feller.
The perspective of the undead.
Mm-hmm. But I also think that generally slashers don't bring out the smartest of reactions in people.
Fair.
So I gave it a 4. And again, the reason why it's so low is because the protagonist that we're following, I don't think is like full of alive brains. They're like a zombie. So that I deducted points because they are undead.
That was a great sentence. Full of alive brain.
Yep. I don't think I'm full of a live brain right now. If you couldn't tell. For scares, I gave this a 5, and not because not like mostly because of the kills, like being more creative. I don't think I got like jump scared or anything. I think it was hard to be jump scared in this because you're watching it from the perspective of the killer. And so like
Yes.
even when there is tension, I would say the only like surprise part was the lake scene because he just went underwater and then you like don't know when he's going to pop back out. But other
Sure.
than that, like you're following him, so that's not changing.
Yeah.
For shakes, I gave it a 4. Again, I think it's a really interesting concept. That just like for me struggles a little bit with just being kind of long and drawn out. But
For sure.
I'm certainly curious to like see the slasher genre like continue to be explored further. But yeah, so a 4 from me.
Great.
Cool. Nikisha, why don't you go?
Yes. For me, this is eerily similar, Jamie. I did 3 for skulls. Same reasons. Scares, I gave it a 4 for the kills. And then shakes, I gave it a 5 because I like the concept, like we all said, but just could have been a little bit better execution.
I'm not too far off from both of you as well. Skulls, I gave it a 3. Scares, I gave it a 3. I gave it a little higher. I gave it a 6 for shakes, mostly because like it's so avant-garde and the kills are memorable that like I'll definitely think about this one. Like I feel like when people say like what are good slashers to watch, like you think of which are your favorites from the like big franchises, and then you think of like the smaller one-off ones. You know what I mean? And I feel like this would land in there lower down, but like if you like these, then maybe try this type of situation. For some reason, shakes is a combo whenever I think of it of like, will I remember this and would I suggest this if someone was looking for an X, Y, and Z suggestion?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with that being said, my suggestion is Jason Lives. Jason Lives is a great Jason movie. And I'm very excited for December because there's a Friday the 13th in December.
Oh, exciting.
So I think now since we've done 2, we're gonna have to go because they're from here on out they're like truly sequels to each other. So I think we'll do 3, 4, 5, 6 as the Friday the 13th go on. So I'm excited to get to Jason Lives, which I think is 6. We'll get there. Cool. Nikisha, what are your suggestions?
Yeah, I'm being lazy, but truly any other slasher movie of the greats, like any Friday, any Halloween, any Nightmares, like it's gonna fulfill what you need of just horny teens being killed in unique ways.
Woo.
Jamie?
And Jamie, yeah, what's your suggestion?
I went with Jason X because that is my favorite. And
Evil
also,
gets an upgrade.
Exactly. And also, I just think that it has some pretty creative kills there too, like the ice, the frozen
The
smash
ice.
face one, the sleeping bag one. Just yeah, it's a good time.
I keep trying to convince my dad to watch Jason X.
Oh really?
Yeah, but ever
Just
since he
for-
watched the wrong Frozen,
Yeah. I forgot about
he
that.
doesn't
Oh my
trust
god.
I forgot about that too.
That's so
So good.
funny.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, my dad. So fun. Great. Well, that wraps up our episode of In a Violent Nature. You can find us on all the social medias, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at Talk Horror Pod. And producer Brian, where can they listen to us?
Yeah, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcast, like YouTube. Hi, YouTube. You can. I'm waving, but you can't see me. Spotify, and of course Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Also, those reviews really help. Also, I randomly Googled us today, and I saw that somebody suggested us as a horror podcast suggestion on Reddit a year ago. But that was really cool to see. And we're constantly kind of making a lot of the Apple charts for movie reviews and stuff like that. So, your reviews are really helping us. Please, I like reading them, to be selfish. But
Yes.
if you haven't written us a review yet and you really enjoy us, make that our Halloween gift. We would like our Halloween gift from you. We want is for you to write a review 5 stars for us. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. How should we end the episode?
Do we all take a walk?
Should we all walk?
Oh,
should we all go for a walk? You want to go for a walk?
Let me get my watch on.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's all put our watch on. We'll just take a nice little stroll.
We'll all start a competition for the week on Apple Watch and see.
Yeah,
who
it'll be called our In a Violent Cityscape.
Walk.
Yeah.
Yes. So tune in next episode to see who won. Fantastic. Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.